Sumeria, we find the earliest phalanx formation, with troops trained to fight and march together, to obey orders and to keep close formation. 1,500 years later, the Canaanites fought in much the same way. These are the troops the Israelites had to face, and these are the tactics they had to learn. Shields! Spears! The Israelites fought with these early armies and learned from them. But their battles against the Canaanites could do little to prepare them for their next and greatest enemies. Coming up, the team learn how to win against the Philistines. Our team have been training with bronze weapons, but just like the Israelites, they are about to be overtaken by technology. From around 1200 BC, a group called the Sea Peoples invaded the Middle East, probably from Asia Minor or the Aegean. Among them were the Philistines. They invaded and settled the southwest coast of Canaan, and they became mortal enemies to the Israelites. They were probably the first true swordsmen. They used a sword of about 3 foot long with a small shield that we would call a buckler. But the really important thing about these guys is that their weapons were made of iron. Now, it's difficult to understand how important and how terrifying this change was. Just imagine you have a well-equipped army with bronze weapons being absolutely carved to pieces by these new iron ones. The Israelites really had a problem. By the mid-11th century BCE, the Philistines had beaten back the Israelites and established themselves deep into Judah. Saul was chosen to lead the Israelites, and he created a professional standing army of about 3,000 men. We particularly remember the exploits of 2 of Saul's men. The first was his eldest son, Jonathan. Now, the Philistines were strongly encamped at a place called Mishmash. They had a small advance guard out ahead of them. Jonathan and his shield-bearer left the main Israelite army and skirted around, attacked the advance guard, and routed it. Just the 2 of them.
You gotta be kidding.
Well, no, you mustn't underestimate the effect of a surprise attack. You see your friends falling all around you, you run away, you have to tell everyone we've just been attacked by a huge force. The main Philistine camp is thrown into confusion. They begin to retreat. The retreat becomes a rout.
So, how many people were in the advance guard?
Well, we don't know, but probably around 20.
We're supposed to believe that 2 defeated 20.
There's no way.
Well, maybe there is a way. We have to look at the idea of Jonathan and his shield-bearer. There's a lot of mention of the shield-bearer in ancient texts. Now, this guy may just have been a slave to carry his master's heaviest piece of equipment. But what if he wasn't? What if he was part of an active team of 2? Now, most soldiers have the same problem. Only part of their mind is focused on aggressive intent. The other part is thinking about defense, about survival. This immediately cuts his aggressive effectiveness by 50% or more. And every soldier he meets has the same priorities. But what if you trusted someone enough to rely on him entirely for your defense? That would mean that you could get rid of your own shield and concentrate entirely on attack. Now, if you guys train together effectively, you can make a really great fighting team.
I think if you had a lot of time to practice, you could fight like this really well, but you'd have to work together for a long period of time to get in perfectly in tune.
Yeah, I agree. Together, I could see how this could be a very deadly combo, but a lot of time and energy. You'd almost have to be, brothers in a sense.
They were pretty well guarded a lot of the time, and when you were trying to attack one, the other one always seemed to get you.
Yeah, we really had a tough time trying to synchronize our attack. And we had to really work together in order to separate them. Lateral movement, kind of flanking movements worked real well against them.
It's time for you guys to learn one of the oldest and simplest weapons ever invented, and one of the most difficult to master, the sling. We have 2 types. This is the heavy sling. It throws a large rock a remarkably long distance. This is particularly useful in siege warfare and against closely packed masses of troops. The lighter version throws a much smaller stone. Now, these little stones can go with amazing accuracy and speed. The stone goes inside the cup of the sling. The loop of the sling is placed over these 3 fingers, and the loose end is held between the thumb and forefinger. Now, there are various techniques for throwing. You can either throw underhand or overhand. The classic method is to swing it around the head. When you reach the right speed, You release. In certain cultures, and among all sheep-rearing societies, the sling was taught to every boy from childhood. It kept wolves away from the sheep, and of course it was always an excellent weapon of war. But the most effective weapon of the period was the war chariot. Now, we keep on hearing about chariots, and we know exactly what they look like, because some have actually survived from New Kingdom Egypt. This is a modern reproduction. The originals were incredibly light, only 77 pounds. They had a great range for those days of up to 37 miles per day, and the closing speed in battle was 24 miles per hour. Now, these chariots were mostly with 2 horses and 2 riders. One was the driver, you, Scott. You would hold those reins in your right hand, because in your left hand, you'd hold that shield. Now, that was to protect the really important guy, Chris, who was the archer. Now, you'd be lashed on into position to give you the stability required to shoot your bow. The chariot itself was packed with masses of quivers full of arrows and loads of javelins for throwing at short range. This whole setup was incredibly expensive. Think of a $4.3 million M1A1 Abrams tank. There was the archer, who would either be a nobleman or a first-class professional soldier, his bow, scale armor and equipment. The charioteer was also a highly skilled professional. The horses would also often be armored, requiring a huge staff to breed, train and feed them.